Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I'm Sharon.
I'm Christy. We have a guest with us today, Vern, and she is a tattoo artist with Ink. We're so happy to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm going to give a little bit of background is we went to Davenport to have a sleeve done. And while we were there is where we kind of got to see you and see your work. Just love the work and stuff like that. And thought, this would be a great opportunity to talk with a tattoo artist. But I think the other thing is that predominantly tattoo artists were men for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
Did you find that like hard to jump into that arena?
Yes and no. So I got into the industry close to 10 years ago. So it was a really different industry back then. And it was pretty male driven still at that time. But I also grew up on a farm surrounded by men. So that atmosphere I was a little bit more familiar with.
Oh,
I
okay.
would say some of the old timers, as we call them in the industry, they can be quite tough. So it was a little intimidating being a woman, but I also have this like underlying, I don't care, I'm going to do what I want anyway. And I'm myself. So there were times where it was tough, but also I never let it slow me down or stop me.
Did you start out in life being an artist and then that was because a lot of times that's the trend, people will be an artist and say, oh, I can then tattoo. What was it for you? How did you get into being a tattoo artist?
So I've done art forever. I was as a kid, and that was my favorite thing to do. And then in high school, I had a wonderful art teacher who encouraged us to further our education in art. So I went to school in Davenport. I went to St. Ambrose University and entered their fine art program and got a fine art degree there as oil painter and charcoal drawing. That was what my degree was in. So yeah, art's kind of been it for me forever.
Nice.
Okay, so we went from oil and charcoal into tattooing. How did you get from, because those are kind of two different little arenas there.
It's very different. So I had graduated and was going to go to grad school to further my education in fine art, and then just kept getting intimidated by the process. It was really daunting. I just didn't feel quite ready. I needed some time off. Well, my 1 year off turned into 2 or 3 years off and was missing art terrible. I just wasn't really doing anything with it much more than here and there. And I was working at a mall actually and had quite a few friends asking me to draw them tattoos because we're all of that age when we were like, oh, I think I want to get tattooed. And it just kind of clicked of like, why would I draw it and not do it? So I just kind of got this little wild hair and I was like, I think I'm going to try how to learn how to tattoo. And that's how I got in. I asked an artist I knew and see if he would teach me.
Oh, nice.
So what is the process to being a tattoo artist? Because I think it's not like if you're an artist, you just go be a tattoo artist. Because I know that there's depth. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Because how do you learn to be a tattoo artist? Because you were already an artist.
And I'm sure learning the equipment and that kind of thing too.
Yeah, the technical side, it's slow experience, but I do really feel like this foundation of being an artist is kind of crucial. Although in some ways I almost felt like it worked against me for a little while because the actual act of tattooing is so different than working on a paper or canvas because you're working on a human. And so I had to relearn a lot of things in art for it to be usable on skin, line work being a huge one. It was a weird thing because I had spent all my years as an artist getting told, if you're doing something realistic, it doesn't have lines. And then I go to learn how to tattoo, and they're like, well, line work's the basis of tattooing. So it was really interesting to learn how to make art so that it would last in the skin. But the process itself of learning is practice, practice, practice. And unfortunately, it's permanent. It's on people. So practicing is difficult. You practice on various things. I practiced on grapefruits for a long time. Yeah, just to run the machine, get the hand strength and get used to the tools, and also to work on a 3D surface. That's a really interesting shift if you aren't used to it.
Yeah. did it provide a really good similarity in working on actual skin to work with that?
No,
What?
not really.
I was thinking, huh?
Yeah, we're so not similar as far as like, you have to stretch the skin if you're working on a human, and the depth is slightly different. The grapefruit skin is a lot tougher, but at that point in time, I was using the older style machine, a coil machine, the loud ones, if anyone remembers
Oh, yeah.
those, the loud zappers, yeah, and they're heavy and they're unbalanced, and so you have to get the strength built up in your hand to tattoo properly. And so that's more than anything what it was about. And like getting used to the vibration and working with a needle rather than a paintbrush or a pen.
Right.
Oh,
And they smell good. When I tattooed them, I always liked that. It smelled like oranges.
Oh, yeah.
see, that would be the cool thing of it. When you talked about that, you talked about the time you took off from art. Did you not realize how important art was to your life? Because it sounded like art brought a lot to your life as far as the
Mhm.
mental piece and all that piece of it. Was it like you just went into a slump or what?
Yeah, that's probably exactly what I would call it. I loved college. I loved my experience. I loved it so much that I actually got 2 degrees and a minor in the 4 years I was there. So I overworked myself. I was taking as many classes as they would allow me to. And when I graduated, it was like I was a little lost. I didn't know, because I had been in the school environment for my whole life and thrived in it. And then suddenly that was gone. And I think if I hadn't taken the year, if I had actually just applied when I was still in school, I probably would have gotten that next degree, the master's. But taking that year off, I just kind of got a little lost. Yeah.
Mm.
And I was young. I was in my early 20s. Your priorities are a little different
Oh
when
yeah.
you're that young. Yeah, I actually found, so I was working in retail and I landed a job in visual marketing. So I would do the mannequins, I would put up the poster. I mean, essentially the way the store looked was what I would do. And I went and did some training for that. And for a moment, I thought that was what I was going to do. But I realized that corporate life was not for me. I just couldn't work for big corporations. So,
Mm.
It's always interesting how we have this vision of our life, and then it's like you fast forward 5 or 10 years, and you're there like, well, that didn't turn out according to plan. It's really a blessing in a way, you know what I mean?
oh,
Um,
yeah.
we hear so much of the time people who are saying, I don't want to work for corporate. I don't want to do those things. They'll like certain aspects of the job. So I'm guessing for you, you liked the creative piece of it because it's still
Mhm.
that's still a very artistic process for you.
Yeah, I loved putting together outfits and clothes, and I was really into the place I was working. I loved helping customers put together outfits down to the jewelry. So like that part I did love. And there was a woman who did our visuals. She was like corporate visuals. And she came and worked with me a lot. And I actually thought she was very cool. She was very stern and a little scary, but she took the time to teach me how things were done in that sort of job field. And I respected that. I thought that was really cool. So there was definitely some positives in it. And honestly, I don't think I would be as half as good with my clientele now if I didn't have that time in retail, because it taught me how to talk to people where like I never had to do that before. So there was a lot of good that came out of it.
That's really actually kind of a neat thing because I don't think sometimes people will be in jobs and stuff and then what is kind of when they're done, but they don't take that moment to realize what knowledge they gained from it. And you're at least able to see, oh yeah, it did teach me how to talk to people because in essence, that's what you're doing. You're selling your art, you're selling
Mm.
your product, which is you.
Yeah, and when you think about it, if you're doing a large scale piece, you're spending a lot of time with that person day in, day out. And so you
Mhm.
aren't fostering a comfortable environment for everyone. It's gonna be not fun.
Right. So how long have you been tattooing?
I just looked, so I was like, I knew that question's gonna come up, and I knew I was between 8 and 9 years. So I did my first tattoo August 2015. So it'll be 9 years in August.
Oh, wow.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
When did you realize this was going to be your career? Was there like a pivotal moment where you said, this is it?
I don't think so. I think it was more of like a slow burn for me. It gave me something to work towards again, which is why I think I liked college so much. It gave me a goal of like, I want to be better. I want to do better. I want to try this. I want to do this. I think it just more like snowballed or domino effect of me constantly trying to be better and get better over the years, where it's just the drive has gotten more and more of, yeah, what can I do next that's bigger, badder, cooler,
Yeah.
more beautiful.
What a great way to find your niche, though, because you got a lot of experience during that time, and it actually sounds like it's contributing to what you're doing now. So that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as you look back on your career, do you have those pieces that you've done that just really stand out and you say, this is what I got? This is why I'm a tattoo artist, because of these particular pieces that have just stood out for whatever reason?
Yeah. Moments and pieces for sure. People will often ask if I have a favorite tattoo, and it's a no, I don't, because I always see flaws in my own work. That's just the life of an artist. But there are particular pieces that I look back on of like, wow, I learned a lot, or like that was monumental for me. Thinking back over my career, where it could be a small tattoo, but it was the first time I accomplished something that I had been struggling with. Each tattoo is a learning experience, that's for sure. I was just thinking back, I finished it right before I moved to Maine, a full sleeve of Jurassic Park dinosaurs.
Oh,
That thing,
wow.
so cool. It was so cool.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
yeah.
So do you do a lot of custom tattoos for people?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. At this point, everything I do is custom. Yeah. I mean, unless it's like my own drawings too, of course, which people will get. But most people come to me after viewing my work and seeing that I'm the right artist for them, because I have a very specific look to my tattoos. And so they'll be like, this is what I want in your style, sort of thing.
What would that style be?
Yeah.
How would you describe your style?
I'm kind of in between. I consider myself fine line, black and gray realism, illustrative realism, because I can do full realism thanks to Dustin. He's taught me.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
I really like to bring in that illustrative realism side to it, where it might have some ornamental, it might have some line work, rather than just full bore realism. Not that that's not amazing too, but as an artist, I like to add in a little something different to it.
Well, I follow you, and that's why, and so I see your work in progress and then the finished products and stuff, and just phenomenal work. And I understand when you put it that way, I was there like, why would you characterize that? Because some of your work can have that realism, and then you throw in that little bit of extra, like you said, that ornamental kind of piece to it, which is really an interesting way to bring art together.
Can you walk us through kind of your creative process when you're designing a custom tattoo?
Yeah, so I'll get an email. We have a little form for people to fill out, and it just kind of asks a few questions of, what are you wanting? Where is it going on the body? Roughly what size? And then any reference photos. I love reference photos because it gives me a little bit of a window into what my client wants. It's hard to tell because a lot of times I haven't met this person. So then I kind of browse through all of that, try to get a vibe for the project. And then if it's anything that I can do my own research on, I usually actually do. If it's like a Norse god or something like that, I get those occasionally, or like a Greek god, I'll go and look them up. What could they possibly be holding? What else is involved with their story to make it just that much more, unique.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the botanical, I'll go and look it up online and see what they look like. A lot of times I strongly refer to botanical illustrations because they're, to me, like a super accurate depiction of the floral without like it being kind of confusing of like, oh, what is this part? Because it's a illustration, it's a botanical illustration, so it's going to describe a lot of what's going on. And then I get on my Procreate app and get to drawing. I use a lot of body part reference. So if it's going to be like a sleeve, I'm going to pull up an arm. I like to do like a thumbnail sketch or like a rough scribble sketch of the layout of like, okay, so this is here and this is here. Does that work? And then I kind of move things around in that before I actually start to detail out the piece. That helps to make sure that the design itself will be successful long before I spend all the time detailing it out. You
Right.
can waste time doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, once I have my rough layout, then I'll really start honing in on the details, kind of making it my own within the limits of my client's wishes.
Right. Is there a favorite design that you like to do more than others? Like if it's more like a botanical kind of thing or portrait type of thing or something like that?
Yeah, I usually say anything nature based is my happy zone.
Cool.
I love anything with a face, so animals, people, as well as anything botanical.
Because I always find this interesting because sometimes people say, I want a tattoo, and then they'll say about where they want the tattoo. And do you ever find that sometimes where they pick for the tattoo sometimes isn't the best spot for it or things like,
Un-
because I think that would happen.
it does, unfortunately. And like my goal is 100% client happiness, right? Like I want to give them the best possible tattoo I can. It's their body, not mine. But if I feel like I can't give them the best tattoo in the area, I usually be like, maybe over here. What do you think about that? And see if they like it. Most people are awesome and they trust the experience that I have.
Nice. So they don't just come in and say, "Hey, I want an octopus tattooed on my forehead," and you're okay with it.
Uh, maybe not.
Well, and I guess that kind of makes sense. Do you anybody ever come to you with a tattoo and it's been a design that you just said it just doesn't resonate with you?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. And like a lot of times, if it's like out of my style, then I refer them to somebody whose style is more like a color piece or something like that. But, if it's within the realm of what I can physically do, I usually do still take it on because it's a learning experience. I just did a tattoo last year, turned out really awesome, but it was so out of my usual. It was really interesting. He wanted like a military memorial with some dog tags, an eagle, the flag, the eagle, I was like, yeah, totally comfortable with. But he wanted a tank. I don't know what a tank really looks like other than like the general shape. And so that was really interesting for me to tattoo. It just so different for me. It was a learning experience. It turned out great. I'm not sure if I would love to tattoo another tank, but uh, I learned a lot. Yeah.
Sometimes one and done.
Yeah.
Yep, I did one tank. I think I'm good.
Is there a particular memorable or meaningful tattoo experience that you've had with a client
That just
really
stuck
stands
with
out?
you.
Mm,
But the client themselves, maybe not even the tattoo itself, maybe.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I several come to mind. Unfortunately, I will see people, but predominantly women, come in with some painful memories of domestic violence. They'll want a certain tattoo covered or a scar covered. Those tend to stick out to me because I'm sorry that you even have to do this. I just recently did a cover up of something like that. I just felt for her that she even had to go through even more pain, right, in order to get this painful memory covered up. My heart goes out to anyone with that, and I actually do a discounted rate for any domestic violence cover up or anything like that, as well as unfortunately there is a thing with sex trafficking. Well, they'll tattoo certain things on women. I luckily haven't encountered that. I had somebody who was in contact with a woman who had a tattoo from trafficking, and he was going to bring her down to get tattooed by me for free to get it covered. It ended up falling through, but that's something that I feel very strongly about, that if there's anything like that, that's not something I would ever feel comfortable charging for, because why, that's, they didn't want that to begin with. So
And along those lines, when you talked about women, Have you had any women who come in after mastectomies? Because that's another thing that women do is after
Mm.
mastectomies, they'll go get tattoos, or if they have that kind of scarring from that.
Yeah, I personally haven't tattooed over a mastectomy scar yet. I do have a client though who worked with one of my coworkers and he did that and then I added on. Yeah, we do see that here and there. Amazing, strong women to not only have all that and then get tattooed over it. It's always like, wow, like you're impressive. You're an impressive human being, that's for sure.
Well, it really shows that transcending from being a victim to that, to the cancer, to this is my story. I know for us, tattoos are a story. And do you
Mm.
find that, do you feel like when somebody comes to you with that story, do you feel like after you do those tattoos, when you look at that tattoo, do you see the story? Are you able to see it as well?
Yeah, that just jumps into my brain. I worked on amazing client for several years. We did both of her legs and then her forearm, and her legs were like flora, fauna from both Australia and New Zealand because she was born in New Zealand, she's from New Zealand, and then she lived in Australia. And so yeah, I did feel like it told her story, and then her forearm piece was loosely based off of the tribe that her mom is from in New Zealand. That was very cool. We got very close over the years of tattooing and just learning about her life in New Zealand and Australia.
Oh, nice. That's always so cool. I think the stories that you would hear would be just amazing,
Mhm.
to be a part of. And I think sometimes too, because a lot of people, for them, tattoos represent some, whether it's memorial or some representation of their past, but it's that way of continuing that story in a way, and as a tattoo artist, you get to be such an active participant of that.
Yeah, we do. And a lot of times the tattoos represent specific times and things of people's lives. So it does really end up being a life story.
Yeah. I know for us it is.
Yeah. Well, when we came in to get our sleeves done, that those are based on trips that we took with people to specifically to Las Vegas. So there's a representation for
Each
each.
trip
Yeah.
that we took. So
Oh, I remember they were Las Vegas based, but yeah, I guess I didn't realize it was that like that
it's very specific.
of a story. I like that.
Yeah.
What year do you remember? What year you guys were getting tattooed?
October of 2020.
Yeah, I believe
Was it 2020?
20
That was a crazy
21.
year.
it might have been 21.
Maybe it was 21,
Yeah, I'm not for certain.
something like that. But yeah, we were there for a few days.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Dustin's ever going to do a 6-day stint with tattoos again.
I don't know, he was always pushing the envelope on what he could do and how crazy of a tattoo it could be.
Oh, I know. He was so bent over. And when we told him, no, she's going to come in for 3 days, I'm going to come for 3 days back to back. And he goes like, I'm going to tattoo you one day, you're coming the next day. I said, look, we only have 6 days.
Gotta make it all fit.
Hey, I understand. I got my sleeve done in 3 days. I went up to Canada for it, and when you're there, you're there. You got to get it done.
Oh,
I know,
yeah.
you got a time restraint. I mean, would I do that again? Probably not. No.
I'd rather space it out.
It's interesting because people often ask, well, why do you get tattoos? And I really thought about that question. And they're like, you go pay for a painting to hang in your wall. I said, all we do is pay for the painting to be on our skin. And, there's no difference to me because art is art,
And we get to carry it everywhere.
exactly. And you get to showcase it to people. People say, oh, what does that mean? And then it continues those stories, I think. And then it's like that, not only the stories that we're telling, but, people often ask, well, who's your tattoo artist? And then it goes into that, so I think it's this whole thing that just circles back around, and that it's people giving back and telling stories and sharing those experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I said pretty much the exact same thing to my parents because they didn't quite get it. They're supportive, whether they understand or not. They're just blind supporters. But when I was getting my sleeve done and I'm working on a back piece as well, I think my mom was just trying to understand like why I was going to the specific artist so far away and like what it was all about. And I'm like, it's art. It's art. It's livable, wearable art that I would be paying for my walls, but I'm just getting it in my skin so I can look at it every day. And then it clicked, and because she had seen me in art for so long, it was like finally she was like, "Oh, that makes sense." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it does."
So do you always choose the same artist, or is there specific artists that you have work on your tattoos specifically?
Right now, I am trying to finish this large scale project I've had in my head for my own skin. Pretty much since I started tattooing. So right now I'm going to the same artist, Raf Simo. He's awesome. He's in Canada, in Winnipeg. So my vision was I wanted my right sleeve to connect to my full back, to connect to my full left leg. So it goes across my body, but essentially I wanted it to be one flowing work of art, which is why I'm going to the same artist because I want it to all look the same. And then when I finally finish that project, I will probably branch off and find some new crazy project that I want to get tattooed on me. We have my leg up next. So I'll probably do 3 days in a row on my leg to get a full leg sleeve. So,
Nice.
And I think
yeah.
that's interesting too, because how did you research and find, and for tattoo artist to tattoo artist, I think is interesting because how did you find that artist? What resonated with that artist with you?
It was years ago. I think I followed him when I first started tattooing. He was up on my like discovery page or whatever on Instagram. And I just stopped. I was like, wow, I'd never seen tattoos that looked like that before. And I mean, granted, this was, 8 years ago. I feel like the boom in Instagram for tattooing has changed a lot of things, but I had specifically never seen ornamental work like his. And so I just became a big fan. I'm just a big nerdy art fan. I was like, oh, this art's so cool. This art's so cool. I finally got brave enough to email him when I felt like I was ready for it. At the time, I thought he was in Berlin, and I was like, I don't care. I'll go. I'll go anywhere because it's just was beautiful and it was perfect and it was everything I had envisioned for my skin. And that's the thing. Researching your artist is so important because you got to find somebody who's going to fit what you want instead of trying to make a person that is in your hometown just fit into whatever you want, right? Find the right person for it. Obviously, it's expensive to travel and all that, but for me, it was worth it. Luckily, he was in Winnipeg and not Berlin, and I didn't have to go quite as far. But he ended up, I was so nervous because this is like, I mean, he has 60,000 followers on Instagram. He's like been tattooing 20 years in Europe. He's kind of a big deal. And I go to meet him, and he's just the most humble, chill, cool person ever. My 3 day of tattooing, I was like, I could have sat for 4 or 5 just to listen to him and learn from him. And I've since gone back for my back, and then this piece here. It's just, as if no time had passed in between. Just a very awesome tattooer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. So in all of you know a lot of artists in that, and you know that there's been artists that have had their own shows and stuff. When you look at the artists that you've worked with in that, and you see the ones that have had their shows in that, what do you think when you see that? Do you think, man, I know this person, they should have had their own show a long time ago?
Yeah, kind of. Well, okay. So the Ink Master thing, I have a love-hate relationship with Ink Master, as well as like Kat Von D's show, because they brought tattooing into our homes. They made tattooing. I think it was a huge deal for the industry that those started to become so popular because it made tattooing much more approachable and not like, only hard, tough prison guys get tattooed. Suddenly like you see anyone getting tattooed and it's more like of an open environment. But those shows are crazy. Some of the timelines, none of it makes sense. And then the way they insult the tattoos when they're bad, I'm like, that's on a human being. That's not cool to do. I really have a problem with that. But yeah, some of the tattoo artists on there, yes, I know artists who are better. Dustin was actually going to be on Ink Masters, I think, for a little while. And then something happened. I can't remember where he ended up not going. But through the years, I've known several people who have like made it almost onto the Ink Master show. So yeah, I feel like people with the right skill, they do actually accept on. It's not this like huge gatekeeping thing, I don't think. But I haven't watched the newest season. Apparently they're back on with a new season. But one of the people I follow on Instagram went on and won it. And I was like, oh, that's so weird, because I was watching his work before he went on and won. That was kind of cool to see.
Oh yeah. So that's what I was wondering about is what do you thought about the quality piece? Because I know that they always incorporate a lot of drama and stuff. I think that's like for entertainment value in that. But as far as the quality of the work and stuff, it's really cool that you've known some that have gone on to do that. That's really neat.
Yeah. And I would say the people who end up winning, fantastic artists. Like I remember watching Tattoo Baby when it was she was getting so close to winning, I think 3 seasons in a row, and she finally did. She's a fantastic artist. I've seen her work at the New York Tattoo Convention. She was there, and very deserving of winning. She's a killer tattoo artist, that's for sure. So yeah, I would say that they, even with all the shticks of being on the TV show, they still do pretty good artists on there.
That's good.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I think the creativity of artists, and how they can conceptualize, and, you take them in, and we just go into Dustin, we go, okay, here's this. I'm trying to think, wonder where that's going to go. And none of it went anywhere, I thought.
Well, and how you can conceptualize it is really good. How do you balance your artistic vision with clients' expectations?
That's tough. That one still is a current battle. Not that like I'm against my clients or anything like that, but it's always something that you're working to balance. Sometimes clients have different expectations of what can be achieved, and I just have to be straight up. This is too small for how much detail you want. I don't feel comfortable doing like that. Let me try it a little larger. How do you feel about that? Right? That is always going to be a part of my job in designing. There's a lot of times where people just want lots and lots of stuff into one tattoo. And it's my job as an artist to be like, no, actually, it's going to look better if you just have these 3 things that we can highlight instead. But then again, I'll get clients who give me the vaguest idea, and they'll like, have fun. And I'll design it, and I'm like so nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna hate it. I don't know what they like. I don't even know them. This is gonna be terrible. I come in, show them the design. Perfect. Let's do it. They're like, oh my gosh. That one always gets me so excited, but so nervous at the same time.
I think when you trust in the artist, and I think that's really the biggest thing, I think when you get, and like you said, research, get those artists that have good reviews, you're looking at their work, they're doing that, because then, like us with Dustin, we're in Colorado, he's in Davenport. This is all just done here, sending pictures here and doing all this. And then we're going to come in and he's going to put it all together, and trusting that the artists conceptualize different than people who are non-artists. They see things that we don't see, if that makes sense. That's why they're artists and other people aren't. So it's really trusting in that artist. Have you ever done a piece that somebody just said, it didn't turn out the way I wanted, or, even early on, or?
Not physically done that I know of. There may be people out there that, have things that they aren't happy with, and they just haven't told me. Usually we work that through in the designing process. Like, so I schedule time in my days for my clients when they come in and see the design. I'm very open with them. Do you want to change anything now? Please tell me now, so that, we aren't having that problem. So I think I've worked in a way that avoids that circumstance, from as far as I can tell.
Do you see a lot of negativism, or people being negative around the process, even of, because I think sometimes people go in and they don't realize everything that goes into a tattoo. It's like, it's going to hurt. It's going to take time, those kind of things, just, or thinking that you should be faster than you are, or shouldn't we already be done, kind of thing.
I would say more so earlier in my career, I would see stuff like that. And I personally feel a lot of that actually comes more from my insecurity as an artist versus my client. So I feel like when I'm more insecure, or like when I was, years ago, or like when I've had apprentices and I can tell that they're insecure with the client becomes insecure and starts questioning everything you're doing. Rightly so, it's on their body, of course. And so the longer I've been tattooing, the more confident I am of like, no, this is going to look good. My clients have a lot more security in me of being able to do it.
What do you think helped you to overcome that insecurity other than just practicing? I mean, because you were already an artist to start with.
Mhm.
So
Um,
like you brought that confidence into your tattooing.
yeah, it's taken years. That's probably been the hardest part about tattooing for me. I was terrified for like the first 3 years of tattooing. I mean, certainly in the first couple years almost made me quit because it was just I put so much pressure on myself of like, this is permanent, this is on somebody I don't know, and it's permanent. I would say it's taken me a long time to get to settle into my skill and get really comfortable and confident. And a lot of it for me is seeing pieces healed. I love to see my work healed. So much of tattooing, you don't even think about it because you are the client, right? But like I see people every day, and a lot of the times I never see them again. So I have no idea how that turns out. I just assume that they're happy with it. If I don't hear back from them, no good news, right?
Right.
But when obviously I'm happy with it leaving and it looks good, but like the healing and the way tattoos look healed versus fresh is very different. And I tattoo them to be healed, not how they look fresh. And so a lot of times when, yeah, like somebody has gotten a black and gray piece from me and it heals out and I never get to see it, that makes me insecure, or probably used to. But then now that I've been tattooing long enough, I've done enough large pieces that people come back with it healed. I'm like, oh, okay, great. That looks good. Cool. Thank goodness.
Nice. Well, I
Right.
think those things are so important. And I think that, with anything that you start new and, I mean, even being an artist, this is still it's like taking up a whole new genre in that artist. If you're an oil paint and then you go to water, it's still different. Even though you can conceptualize things, I think it's just such a different thing. But to overcome those things, and I'm glad you did, because like I said, I've seen your work is fabulous, and it's one of those things of keeping that forward motion. Who do you think have been your biggest supporters? Because, you talked about you have the apprentice now. That seems like something that's really important in the tattoo industry.
Hmm. I would say throughout my art career, there's a lot of people I would consider to be my mentor. It's not just one, it's been several. As far as supporters, my family, my grandpa, big supporter. My grandpa got his first tattoo by me at age 80. I was still in my apprenticeship and he was like, I want a tattoo. And I'm like, you should wait
Yeah.
until I'm good. And he didn't, and he loved it. He loved it. But
Love it.
yeah, I would say like my professors in college, big mentor. And the guy who taught me how to tattoo, of course, my first mentor, he got me into the industry. I'm forever grateful for that. Dustin was huge for me, though. I worked for Dustin for 6 or 7 years from the moment he opened Dark Side.
Oh,
He
wow.
took me in from a shop where I wasn't really learning and I needed a little bit more guidance. And he took me on. He didn't have to. I was really new. I was a year and a half in to tattooing professionally. So like probably like 2.5 years since I started my apprenticeship. For some whatever reason, he believed in me and he taught me a lot. He definitely taught me a lot.
Nice.
Awesome.
Do you do a lot of the tattoo shows and events?
Yeah. Well, we were doing them a lot before COVID. And then I've done a couple since COVID. And then with opening my own business, we haven't hit any yet, but we're going to start now that the business is open. We'll probably start with Tampa because I learned how to tattoo down in Florida and my sister still lives there. I have friends in the tattoo industry down there, but also I think my apprentice will be ready by the time Tampa's convention is in November. So goal is to start hitting up conventions again. She wants to go. She's excited. So
Oh,
we'll do it.
nice.
How is it different for you and how, I mean, the whole experience of having your own shop?
It's been cool. In a lot of ways, it's the same, if that makes sense, because I've been running as an independent contractor for a long time. That's pretty much what you are as a tattoo artist. And then with starting with Dustin when he first opened the business, I got to see the ins and outs of how he ran his business. And I was very involved with running that business for a long time. And so when it was time to open my own, in a lot of ways, it was just like seamless. But then also the knowledge of like everything's now on me, right? Like if we want to do a convention, that's up to me. If we want to run merch, that's up to me. If we want to do stickers. So there's just it's the same work, but just slightly more of like, oh, I've got to do it all myself now.
Right.
What made you decide to go into your own business? And you were in Davenport and now you're in Maine. So what kind of led to that transition piece for you?
I was wanting to get out of the Midwest for a while. Gosh, I think since before COVID, I was wanting to. I never meant to stay in Davenport that long, but then COVID hit, of course. I was kind of just thinking about places I might possibly want to move to. I knew I didn't want to go back to Florida. That wasn't for me. But I work for a guy down there, super great guy. He was or is he came up in the industry with a guy who owns a shop here in Portland, Maine. And so I guest spotted with them and visited Portland and loved Portland. And I was kind of at a point in my life, I'm like, well, what if I just move? Why not? I don't really like have anything specifically tying me to Davenport other than I have family around. And I definitely am the type of person, if an opportunity presents itself, I'm going to take it. And so that's what happened. That's what got me to Portland. And then that's what ultimately got me into opening my own space because a space opened up that was like perfect for a tattoo shop. Found out later it was a tattoo shop, and that's why it was already perfect for a tattoo shop. So it was just like all these things that fell into place of, okay, I guess now I'm going to be owning because this is all too coincidental. I'm not going to ignore that.
Right. Well, it's always nice when things fall into place for you. And sometimes you don't even know what it is until you kind of let yourself be open to the opportunities that might be there. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it's been quite an exciting journey for you. I mean, kind of moving through this whole process and stuff, which is kind of neat. Do you feel like this is where you're at now is kind of where you're going to stay?
Probably not. Us tattoo artists, we like to move around.
Colorado is beautiful.
I know. Colorado was on my list to look at. That's for sure. But yeah, so we right now we're pretty loving it here. It's gorgeous. For the time being, we're here, obviously, because we just opened the business. But ultimately, I think my family will call me home. I mentioned earlier, I grew up on a farm, a family farm. So there is some like underlying responsibility and love for that, where I'll probably eventually want to be closer to the family farm.
And that's where.
That's like an hour straight east of Davenport in Illinois. So it's by Princeton, Illinois,
She's
off
from
of Interstate 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a Princeton, Iowa, which threw me off for a long time, but Princeton, Illinois.
Okay.
But it's a small area, right? Like that's the closest town with a stoplight and a grocery store, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, it sounds like right now you've found your little spot and it's working well for you. So we're very excited and happy for you.
Yeah. So tell us again the name of your shop, and if anybody wants to go and take a look at your work and that, where can they find you?
Yeah, the shop's Inkni Studios, INKNI. My Instagram is Vern_Inkni. We should have a nice little website up and running that wonderful Chris, co-owner, boyfriend, and does all of the tech stuff. He set up very nicely. So that's where you can find us.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Now, if somebody wants a tattoo from you, do they book out? Are you booked out far or is it pretty, what does your scheduling look like?
Yeah, so I try really hard to keep my schedule approachable. I don't close my books as of right now. I don't like to do that. So I am probably 3 months out. I think I'm booking end of August right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Wonderful. Do you have a minimum? I mean,
Mhm. Yeah, I have a $200 minimum. That's an hour of time. I am focused on large scale projects. So that's part of the reason for the minimum. I like to be inclusive for everyone. So I don't want anybody to feel like they can't get tattooed by me, but I do prefer large scale. So that's why I keep my minimum high. But my apprentice, yay, very soon will be taking on smaller projects with a more reasonable minimum rate.
Okay. And you don't just do black and whites, you do also color in that.
I do black and gray only.
Just
Yeah.
black and gray. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. My apprentice is probably going to do color. So the shop soon will be offering color. But as of right now, I don't mind doing pops of color, but black and gray is where my happy spot is.
Nice.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful. It has been awesome. And real quickly,
Yes. Thank you everyone for listening. You can find Two Girls in a Pod at twogirlsinapod.com. You can also find Adventures of Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey on YouTube. And you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts on all platforms. Also, find us on social media, Facebook, and Instagram.
Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
And remember, like, share, subscribe. Anyway, Vern,
Thank you so
we are
much.
so grateful that you joined us. You know, it's been great learning about this and just really learning about how people get where they are at, you know, and that journey that they take to those places and persevering through, you know, whatever it is one has to do. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.